Hello, I'm Maxwell Rothbart, Doc History, and I'm standing here in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, where in 1859 a raid by abolitionists sparked debate and controversy across the nation. The story goes like this. John Brown, who was an Eastern abolitionist, he believed in freeing slaves. This is before the Civil War had even started, was fierce supporter of this principle. So much so that he moved out to Kansas, which is so far away from West Virginia. And he moved out there, and his plan was to fight the pro-slavery forces in Kansas. This is during the 1850s. And he almost single-handedly started what became known as Bleeding Kansas, which was real bloodshed, real fighting going on between pro-slavery and anti-slavery forces in Kansas in the years before the Civil War had actually happened, meaning you had blood being shed over the issue of slavery in the 1850s, where the Civil War wouldn't be until the 1860s. And John Brown was very much involved, he and his sons, in carrying out attacks against pro-slavery politicians, killing people, capturing people, creating all sorts of terror. And he was a wanted fugitive by the United States government for his actions. Well, in October of 1859, John Brown, of fame from Kansas, showed up here in a quiet neck of the woods in what was then Virginia. And it was really unexpected, because here's a guy who operates in Kansas showing up in Appalachia. And his plan was to attack a federal arsenal which stood on the grounds where we are now, marked by this monument. And his idea was that he would take the weapons, seize the arsenal, take the weapons, arm slaves in the region with it, and lead a whole regional slave revolt. That was his idea. And so he had waited out in Maryland, and then in October, late October, he crossed over the Potomac and came here, seized the federal arsenal at Harpers Ferry, and then found himself in trouble because he was hoping, he was counting that he would be joined by all these slaves who would just leave what they're doing and come here, except that no one really found out about it because this is a pretty quiet area. And so while he and his sons and the people who joined them, as a total group altogether of about 20, a little bit more than 20 people, while they found themselves here and having taken over the arsenal, it was then a question of then what? Well, John Brown barricaded himself inside of a building, which again was where we're standing now, and is now just over here across the street at the bottom of the hill. He barricaded himself there and wasn't coming out, and he took hostages with him. And it would create a kind of an issue now for the federal government of how do we deal with this guy. President James Buchanan then ordered then Colonel Robert E. Lee to come over here on behalf of the U.S. Army and see if he could negotiate something to get John Brown to leave. Well, Robert E. Lee came here and he sent one of his trusted lieutenants, J.E.B. Stewart, in to try and figure something out. John Brown was not going to surrender, he was going to fight to the finish. Well, Colonel Lee stormed John Brown's fort over here, as it was called, and John Brown's sons were killed. Many of the people inside were killed. John Brown was injured, but he was captured. He was tried, and then he was hanged. And John Brown's death, again, a man best known for his work in Kansas, but now known for his so-called raid on Harpers Ferry, sparked debate across the country. Northerners saw him as a martyr, someone who was dying for what he believed in. Southerners saw him as a terrorist. And this debate was not something that was going to be easily settled. In fact, a song was written called John Brown's Body, talking about how John Brown is now up in heaven with Jesus.
John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave. John Brown's body lies a-mouldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on.
The tune was later used for Battle Hymn of the Republic, inspiring Northerners to stand strong against slavery, while inspiring Southerners to stand strong for slavery. This really divided the country into two parts and would lead to the American Civil War. But it all started here at John Brown's Fort in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. For Doc History, I'm Axel Rothbart.